Dave Talks Comics, episode 127, Teen Titans, Season 1, Part 2. Welcome to Dave Talks Comics, the program where I talk about comic books, cartoons, and comic book conventions. All past episodes can be streamed or downloaded from the program's website, DaveTalksComics.com. In addition to the program's website, this podcast can also be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook. In this episode, I will be talking about 3 more episodes from Season 1 of Teen Titans, Switched and Apprentice, Parts 1 and 2, plus some additional notes about 2 of the villains in this series, Trigon and Slade. Before I get to the next episode that I want to discuss, I just had a couple of comments. One was something that I had in my notes, but that I forgot to mention when I was talking about the Nevermore episode. And that's that it occurred to me as I was watching this, or maybe it was after I was watching this, that they still haven't had an origin for the Titans. And actually, having watched the whole season, I can say there's no origin episode in the entire season, and I don't think this season is lacking for it. I think that having an origin episode or an origin, quite often these comic book movies use a whole movie or use a heavy portion of a movie for an origin story. I think it's not entirely necessary, and I think this is an excellent example of that, where they just go forward with the story that these 5 superheroes are part of a team. And they don't need to go back and explain how they came together. Maybe they do in a future season. But in the first season, they don't. And I think it works fine without that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, or wanted to mention, was Geek Brunch Retrocast. Or actually, not on Geek Brunch Retrocast. I think he discussed it on both. Chris Ivy talked about the original story that Trigon shows up in on a couple episodes of Geek Brunch Retrocast, but he also talked about it on Myth Making, etc., on his Kid to Flash episodes 34 and 35. Although it is worth noting that Kid to Flash, the focus is on Wally West, not on the team as a whole. Although he does talk about the team. I did not go back to listen to these, so I'm not sure exactly what he covered. And when he was talking about the story in New Teen Titans issues 4 through 6, and that's the 1980 series, but it is covered on, and if you look up Mythmaking ETC or mythmakingetc.blogspot.com, you should find those. They were the June and July episodes, I believe, of Mythmaking ETC, or, well, there was more than one July episode, but I think there was only one episode in June. But like I said, episodes 34 and 35. Episode 7 of Teen Titans of Season 1 is called Switched. And in it, it's basically the Teen Titans battle one villain, and that's the Puppet King. I don't believe there's a precedent. Well, I think there is a precedent for the Puppet King, but I don't believe the character is called the Puppet King. I think he's called the Puppet Master or something along those lines, because there is an issue of Teen Titans that shows the Titans strung up. And this was a hero, or a villain, who was brought back from about 20 years earlier. I believe he had shown up in the very first issue of Green Lantern, the 1960 series, the Hal Jordan series of Green Lantern. And I think he had also shown up in an issue of Justice League, but that went back to the early 1980s, or early 1960s. So it had been about 20 years since he had last been seen. And I have not read that issue, so I'm not sure how it compares to this story. But in addition to being a story that features the Teen Titans versus the Puppet King, it also breaks down into a story of Titans versus Titans with boys versus girls. And this is the way it works. Early in the episode, a package with puppets in it is delivered to the Titans Tower. There's 5 puppets. Each one resembles one of the Titans, and the Titans take them out. They think they're kind of neat. There's no return address on the box in which these puppets show up. But they don't think about it. They just play with the puppets, and some more than others. Starfire is very into playing with the puppets. Raven, not so much into playing with the puppets. I think all 3 of the boys are very into playing with the puppets. Robin, Beast Boy, Cyborg. So they go to sleep that night, and during the night, the Puppet King strikes. I believe he was inside the box, at the bottom of the box that the puppets were in. It must have been I don't think it was that big a box, but that's kind of what it looks like, but it's kind of done in shadow, so you can't see exactly what happens. But the Puppet King comes out of the box. He goes through Titan's tower, and he uses some sort of magic to trap the spirits of the Titans, well, some of the Titans, in their corresponding puppets. First he strikes at the boys, Robin, Beast Boy, and Cyborg, and then he starts to go after the girls. But not Cyborg, Raven's magic interferes with his ability, with his attempt to capture her, Raven, and Starfire's spirits in their corresponding puppets. Because what happened to the boys is that he trapped their spirits in these puppets, and then their bodies were like zombies that he was able to control with all of the superpowers. Of course, Robin doesn't have any superpowers, but still, they were his to control, and their spirits were trapped in these puppets, and you hear them kind of talking from these puppets, but they can't do anything. They're completely, because they're puppets. They have no control over their little puppet bodies. That's basically the end of the first arc, or the first act. In the second act, what we see is Raven and Starfire escape, and then they realize what's happened, that they're trapped in one another's bodies. And there's plenty of humor that comes into this at this point, and I really like this, because, Raven and Starfire are just such diametrically opposed personality types. Starfire is so bubbly and emotional, and Raven is so kind of low-key and unemotional. And what they find out, what it turns out, is that their personalities are the keys to controlling their powers. And so at first they have a very hard time trying to do anything with the other person's powers. Raven can't figure out how to make Starfire's powers work because she's so low-key and she's so unemotional, and the key, it turns out, is to being emotional and to thinking about things. At least that's the way that Starfire explains it, and ultimately that becomes part of the resolution of the story. And Starfire is so emotional that Raven's powers are just going off left and right without realizing it. She's causing all sorts of things to happen. And she has to learn to pull her emotions in and not be so emotional in order to get a hold on on Raven's abilities. And of course, part of the humor here is seeing Starfire's expressions on Raven's face and Raven's expressions on Starfire's face. And it just, and at the same time, they're being chased by Robin and Cyborg and Beast Boy, and they have to escape them. And they have to figure out how to use their powers better. In Act 3, Raven and Starfire track down the Puppet King to his hideout, where he has the puppets, and he has the bodies of Cyborg and Beast Boy and Robin. And he's planning to destroy the puppets, thereby leaving him in absolute control of their bodies. But, of course, Starfire and Raven intercede. They fight with their teammates, and in the end, everybody gets switched back. By this time they have gained a better hold on their abilities, but it's still not like they're completely proficient with their abilities. So they're still not completely, Starfire and Raven are still not completely comfortable in being in the other's bodies, using the other's superpowers. But they're able to use them to some degree, and eventually they're able to destroy the Puppet King's magic he's got this controller which kind of looks like a video game controller, and they're able to destroy that. And when that is destroyed, everybody gets switched back, and that's basically the end of the episode. You don't get a whole lot of explanation of what the Puppet King's motivations were or why he was doing this. But I didn't really think you needed that. I really like this episode. I really love this episode. I think it's my favorite from this season. There are elements in other episodes that I like, but from the beginning to the end, I think I like this episode better than any other. It's the interaction, and a big part of it is the interactions of Starfire and Raven, and how they react to being one another's bodies, how they react to the other being in their body. And there's just a lot of humor in there, and I think it's just very well handled. In the end, Starfire and Raven grow closer together because of this. Up to this point, Raven had been kind of very standoffish, not wanting to get too close emotionally to any of the other team members, as was seen in the previous episode, Nevermore. But here we see her finally kind of loosening up at the end of the episode and accepting Starfire as a friend. Any discussion of the first season of Teen Titans would not be complete without at least a mention of Slade, also known as Slade Wilson, also known as Deathstroke, although I don't think he's referred to as Deathstroke in the cartoon. This episode is called, this is actually a two-parter, what comes next. The first episode is the 11th episode, and it's called Apprentice, Part 1. It opens with Robin having a dream about fighting Slade. Slade has shown up a number of times, I believe 4 times prior to this, and has fought with Robin on a few of those occasions. He hasn't always actually encountered the Titans in those episodes, but he has shown up in four times prior to this. So after having this dream, soon after that, the Titans are contacted by Slade, who reveals that he has a powerful weapon, a chronoton detonator, and that he plans to use it. And this is just typical, supervillain type behavior, to reveal his plans, or at least part of his plans, to the superhero so that they can try and stop him. So the Titans go hunting for the device, which eventually leads them to a chase through the sewers, and they're chasing the speedboat, which has looks like it has the device on it, and is piloted not by Slade, but by some of his henchmen. During this chase through the sewers, Robin gets separated from the others, and that eventually leads to a one-on-one encounter with Slade. While Robin is battling Slade, the others find the device. They catch up to the speedboat, only to discover that it's a fake. And unknown to them, they get infected with nanoscopic probes, which are controlled by Slade and could kill them. But at this point in the story, as of the end of this episode, they have no idea of this. The only person who knows this is Slade and Robin. And Slade uses the probes, the knowledge of the probes, to blackmail Robin into becoming his sidekick. This is a pretty good episode on the whole, but it's not as good when it comes to character moments as certainly the last couple episodes, Nevermore, even the sum of his parts, and Switched were. Robin, it's a very Robin-centric episode. It's very heavily focused on Robin and Slade. And Robin just seems very one-dimensional, totally driven by his, I don't know, I wrote down hatred for Slade, but I don't know if that's really the right word. His drive to capture Slade, to take him out of business, to drive him out of business, I guess, in a way. And that's basically, and so the episode ends with Robin accepting Slade's offer because he doesn't want his friends to die, accepting Slade's offer and putting on this uniform that Slade had made for him, which looks very much like the costume that Slade wears, although not with the same headpiece that Slade wears, with Robin just wearing his traditional, I think that would be a domino mask, although it's a little more fancier than a traditional domino mask. Deathstroke. I want to say a little bit about Deathstroke before I move on to the next episode, to part 2 of Apprentice. Deathstroke first appeared in New Teen Titans number 2. That's the 1980 series of New Teen Titans. I haven't read that story. He had numerous appearances. Probably the most notable is the Judas Contract, which ran in Tales of the Teen Titans numbers 42 to 44 and Annual number 3. It's a 4-part story, all of which came out in 1984. And I read that story when it was coming out. It was one of those instances where I was actually at the right place at the right time as a kid. And I remember buying that off the racks, not at a comic book store, I don't believe, but at the local drugstore. It was a hell of a read. I reread it recently within the past year, I think it was, and I would like to do an episode on it in the future. But there's a reason why I haven't done an episode on it yet, and that's because it is covered in part in Season 2 of Teen Titans. And so I want to wait until after I've watched Season 2 of Teen Titans and then maybe I'll do a side-by-side comparison, or do 2 episodes, one on the cartoon and one on the comic book story. Probably the comic book story first and then the cartoon. It has been collected in trade paperback form, the Judas Contract, but unfortunately the trade paperback is out of print and can go for, you're going to spend at least $30 or $40 for it, I think, and that's even in probably beat-up condition. But all 4 of these issues are available on Comixology for, I believe, $2 a piece. In addition to being a great story, it also, I believe it's Chapter 2, or Book 2, I think they call it, of the Judas Contract, also includes the first appearance of Nightwing, when Robin decides to become Nightwing. I think for a few issues leading up to that, he actually hadn't been Robin. He'd just been Dick Grayson, hadn't been in costume. The only other thing about Deathstroke that I thought was worth mentioning is that from 1991 to 1996, he had his own book, most of which was written by Marv Wolfman, the same guy who wrote the New Teen Titans. And it ran for a total of 60 issues, although the title changed a few times, or twice, over the course of those 60 issues. Oh, and he also appeared in the X-Men New Teen Titans crossover, which was, I think, written by Chris Claremont, and I'm pretty sure the artists were Walt Simonson and Terry Austin. Yes, Walt Simonson and Terry Austin. And that's a great story if you can find it. I'm not sure if it's been reprinted or where it's been reprinted, but that is an excellent story. Episode 12 of Season 1, Apprentice Part 2, picks up more or less where the previous part left off. So Robin now works for Slade. Although it doesn't open on Robin, it opens on the other Titans, Cyborg, Raven, Beast Boy, and Starfire, who are searching for Robin. They end up taking a break from their search to respond to a break-in call at a weapons laboratory, only to find out that the thief is Robin. At first it seems like they've cornered Robin, but then he gets away, and of course they're all shocked that Robin is the way he's dressed, and they don't understand, and Slade has given him explicit instructions never to talk to his friends again. And so even though he's fighting them, he's not allowed to talk to them. After Robin escapes, the other Titans try to piece together why he's acting the way he is. There's a very humorous moment here that I liked where Beast Boy comes up with these theories. At first it looks like he's dressed like Sherlock Holmes and he's pacing back and forth, and he has 2 ideas, and both of them, the way that they are animated, look like something out of EC Comics. One a science fiction comic, the other a horror comic book. And I like them both. I mean, I like the whole, it was not explicitly EC, but it definitely had that flavor. It looked like something I could cover off of an EC comic book. Their next encounter with Robin is at Wayne Enterprises, although it isn't entirely clear. It wasn't until the very end of this fight, the first time I watched it, that it was clear to me that it was taking place at Wayne Enterprises. Because at first they're inside the building, and so they're inside a lab. And then Robin breaks out. He goes up onto the roof, and they're fighting on the roof. And there's this logo on the roof, but they never completely show the logo on the roof, at least intact. At the very end of the fight, you finally see the logo, and a couple of the letters have fallen down. You know, there's those big lit-up signs, or at least the Wayne part is, and the A and the Y, I think, have fallen down. And so it doesn't exactly look like it says Wayne Enterprises, but it's pretty clear at that point that it was Wayne Enterprises. And there's one other reference, and so, I mean, that, of course, is a reference to Batman. And there's one other reference to Batman, which is a little bit earlier in the episode. At one point, Slade had said something to Robin about, maybe at some point you'll think of me as a father. And Robin said, I already have a father. And at that point, it flashes to an image of these bats flying up. So there's your other reference to Batman. Robin is at Wayne Enterprises to steal something, and so he gets into a fight with his former teammates. Slade gives him an order to shoot them with this device that he's equipped Robin with. Robin holds off, and so Slade uses the nanoprobes on his teammates, his former teammates. But he doesn't kill them. I mean, at first it turns them like orange, glowing red and orange, and they're obviously in lots of pain. And it gets a little murky at this point, and this isn't the only point in the episode where it gets a little murky as to what exactly happens. Because it looks like it goes to a commercial break, and then it comes back, and they're no longer, writhing in pain from the nanoprobes, but then they start fighting Robin again. But in the end, Robin gets away. After the fight, back at Titan's tower, Cyborg figures out what happened to them, why they were in so much pain. And he figures out about the nanoprobes. After that, the Titans locate Slade's hideout, and a fight ensues. Slade orders Robin to fight his friends once again. Robin refuses. He somehow infects himself with the nanoprobes. I don't completely understand this. And he takes on and defeats Slade. It definitely gets murky here. I can't really explain it. I mean, you can watch it. It doesn't completely make sense to me. It's still kind of fun. But yeah, once again, there's definitely some logical leaps there that I was unable to follow. So that's basically the end of the episode. They defeat Slade. Slade gets away in the end, but they're able to defeat Slade. They're able to clear themselves of the nano probes afterwards, and everything's happy. Everything's good once again. I really like the look of Slade's hideout in this episode. There's all these huge gears turning, these huge wheels, sprocket-type wheels turning, and some of the fights, there's a couple fights between Slade and Robin that take place in this episode. And Slade almost seems to encourage these fights. He likes the idea that Robin is violent, and Robin wants to attack, and Robin, even if he's attacking him, he's not completely opposed to that. So there's a couple of fights that take place between Slade and Robin on these, and it's a really cool hideout, I think. And Robin definitely seemed much more three-dimensional in this episode because he's caught in between. He doesn't want to hurt his friends, and if he doesn't do what Slade tells him to, then Slade's going to hurt his friends, and you definitely see at least one, well, actually there's two instances of that in this episode. So Robin is caught in this emotional, in this moral dilemma of what he should do, how to deal with this situation. And it's not just moral, but it's a practical dilemma of how to solve this puzzle. How can he protect his friends and at the same time also defeat Slade if Slade has this secret weapon? Overall, this episode was a lot of fun. I like this part much more than the first part, although I've got to admit that on watching the first part a second time, it made a little more sense. I'm still not ready to say that I like this one better than Switched, but I can see how some people would like this one better than Switched. It's definitely probably the showpiece episode. I mean, it is in a way the climax of this season, even though there's one more episode in this season. which I'm not going to talk about in this episode. But there is one more episode in this season. But this kind of is the climax, because this is the battle between Slade and Robin. The whole series up to this point, the whole season up to this point, had been leading up to this. And it was a good cap on that whole thing. But it's not the end of Slade. Slade will be back in Season 2. That's it for episode 127. Dave Talks Comics can be found at davetalkscomics.com, as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and a few other locations. You can find my notes blog at davetalkscomicsnotes.blogspot.com. If you have comments or questions, I can be reached at davetalkscomics@gmail.com, on Twitter at davetalkscomics, or leave a comment on my website. I'm Dave. Thank you for listening.